With Deontay Johnson sidelined, the Pittsburgh Steelers need a wide receiver to step up in a big way. And everybody's going to talk about Calvin Austin and Allen Robinson and how Gunnar Olszewski will be active on Sundays, but it's George Pickens time. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we are talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a rough week one turned into a worse week one as they were hit with two major injuries. Cam Hayward out for at least 8 weeks as he's to undergo groin surgery, probably going to end up on IR. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have to rotate a lot of guys in there. And the big name is Keanu Benton, I believe, as it comes to the defensive line. He's a guy that, in my head, is ready. I've seen him improve every chance he's gotten. I've seen him impress and showcase that he is ready to play at the NFL level and that he was worth that second-round pick every opportunity he got. I think that he's a more natural defensive tackle than he is a nose tackle. And while the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't have a need for him to replace Cam Hayward coming into the season, I think the long-term plan was for him to be that next Cam Hayward in the development and the generation of the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line, while DeMarvin Leal eventually replaced Larry Ogunjobi, and at some point they found a nose tackle. Those plans got moved forward. And I think Keanu Benton serves his best purpose as a defensive tackle. I think the Steelers will view that the same way. I could see DeMarvin Leal rotating in there as well, and Isaiah Loudermilk will obviously play a pretty significant role. But I think it's Keanu Benton time. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give their rookie an opportunity, and I think that rookie is going to shine. I have little worries that Keanu Benton is going to get outmatched on the defensive line there. I think that it's going to be real difficult to stop this guy, especially against the pass, especially against the run. I think all around this guy knows what he's doing. He's so good with his hands that it makes it extremely difficult to bet against him. If he isn't making a tackle, worst case scenario, he's going to track the ball well. If he isn't able to get to the ball carrier or the quarterback, worst case scenario, he's going to disrupt something. That's what you've seen, is that Keanu Benton is a disruptor. And even if he's not a Cam Hayward yet, and Cam Hayward finishes almost all plays, he'll get there. And it's a good start, and it's a good replacement to have to say, oh, okay, we need you right now in a huge, huge way. But on the offensive side of the ball, Deontay Johnson's a huge name to go down. The biggest name the Pittsburgh Steelers could lose outside of Kenny Pickett. Because while Pat Freiermuth is irreplaceable right now, Connor Hayward is a very valuable piece to the offense, and I think one that the Steelers could work in as a pass catcher if need be, while Darnell Washington kind of worked as that blocking tight end. When it came to the running backs, Jaylen Warren is already a fan favorite. There are a lot of people pounding the drum for this guy to get more carries. I think if it needed to, he'd be just fine operating as the backfield RB1. Quarterback is impossible to replace, so replacing Kenny Pickett would be the worst thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers can do, even if he played poorly in week one. Deontay Johnson's different because you needed the 1-2 punch of Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. You needed Allen Robinson in the middle. Everybody plays different roles. And Deontay Johnson's role is so unique that it is going to be very, very difficult to replace. And George Pickens offers as close to that skill set as possible outside of Calvin Austin, but with the experience that you're going to rely on if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everybody is going to look at Calvin Austin and say, okay, chances are he's going to start on the outside where Deontay was. He's going to be the guy that runs these short, intermediate routes on the outside who gets open. He's so twitchy, he's so fast that it's going to be a smooth, somewhat smooth transition. I view it the other way around. I think George Pickens is now a guy that is going to be viewed as a catch and run. I think George Pickens is a guy that's going to be viewed heavily as a, we need you to be open all the time. We need you to be Kenny Pickett's very reliable set of hands. We need you to be the guy that Kenny Pickett can look at and say, he will be there. He will have yards separated from his defender. George Pickens will be my guy when everything else goes wrong. And right now, that's not who George Pickens is. It's not who the Steelers have tried to utilize him as. But Matt Canada and company, they got to change everything. And a lot of guys are going to say, oh, well, there's other options. No, the best option is George Pickens. And it's because he does fit the bill. When he came in here a year ago, we talked about how George Pickens can do so many more things besides go deep. He is much more than a deep ball receiver. He has the ability to catch over the middle. He has the ability to catch and run. He's got the speed. He's got the hands, obviously. He needs to work on his route running, but that's what he worked on all off season long. I talked to Frisman Jackson, and I'll take you back to the spring because I brought this up before, that the wide receivers coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers had one plan for George Pickens this summer, and that was to be able to catch a ball and go 60. George Pickens worked all summer on being able to do that. His release point is much more improved. His release at the line of scrimmage, much more improved. That's what he focused on all training camp and all of preseason, is to be able to avoid a defender early so that he can make a play sooner rather than later. Was he utilized like that in week 1? No. Is that on him? No. Is that on Kenny Pickett? No. It was on Matt Canada. But things change, injuries happen, and now the Pittsburgh Steelers need George Pickens to take everything that he's been working on and put it on the field for the next multiple weeks. There's also all this conversation about whether or not George Pickens is the Steelers' wide receiver 1 or if Deontay Johnson is still the wide receiver 1. I view Deontay as wide receiver 1 until he leaves Pittsburgh. He just offers that type of reliability. I know that he's got catch issues. I know that in the past there have been worries with drops in big moments. I understand that. That's not what I mean by reliability. What I mean is that he is always open. He is a guy that if you need somebody, if you need an option somewhere, Deontay Johnson will be a guy that at least bare minimum has separation. In big moments, yeah, he's got to improve those catches, but it's a strong starting point, and I get he's 5 years in. It shouldn't be a starting point anywhere. That's not the conversation we're having right now. What I'm saying is that he is the wide receiver 1 because he fits the bill of he's the most open receiver that you have. George Pickens is as strong of a wide receiver 2 as they come. But now it's his opportunity to show that everybody who says that he should be wide receiver 1 is right. This is his time to say, look, I could be open all the time. I could be a guy that Kenny Pickett relies on in multiple different routes, even short yardage. Last year, he averaged just above 15 yards a catch. Meanwhile, Deontay Johnson, throughout his entire career, has averaged just about 10 yards a catch. The difference is because George Pickens most of the time is going deep. Deontay most of the time is running comebacks on the outside or out routes on the outside or slants over the middle. Not a lot of deep balls. And he could catch the deep ball, but George Pickens needs to showcase it the other way around. That I could be George Pickens, all natural. I can make any catch. I have the best hands in football, George Pickens, while also being a guy who right now is a very, very reliable open wide receiver, a guy who could create separation to make life that much easier for Kenny Pickett. This is the opportunity for George Pickens. This sets the foundation for the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is George Pickens always going to be a wide receiver 2? And will the Steelers need to eventually find another Deontay Johnson after Deontay Johnson's contract is over? Or can George Pickens become a wide receiver 1, become a Justin Jefferson, become an Odell Beckham Jr., all of these guys who did more than just go deep, who George constantly talks about being like, can he be those guys? Can he be a top wide receiver in the NFL? Can he be the best wide receiver in the NFL like he says he could be? I think he's got all the skill sets. I think he's worked on the right things during the offseason and during training camp. It's just about putting it on the field. I didn't think he'd have this opportunity. I thought that he'd have an opportunity to shine this season, but I didn't think it was going to be this big. But this is huge. If the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is going to succeed, it's going to be because of George Pickens. It's going to be because of the relationship him and Kenny Pickett are able to develop over the next multiple weeks while Deontay Johnson is sidelined with the hamstring injury. This is This is the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers right here. This is everything everybody's been waiting to see. This is George Pickens' time. Are you a superstar or are you still a developmental piece? He gets to prove that starting week 2 and moving forward against some really big competition in the Cleveland Browns. We'll see what happens. I mean, George has given everybody every reason to believe in him. Don't see why that should change right now. But if you're going to talk about somebody who has a huge opportunity with all of these injuries going on, it's definitely George Pickens.